Aisha had waited years for the moment she could finally say it out loud. "I'm buying my own house." She whispered the words late at night to her best friend, holding her phone close as if sharing a sacred secret. She spoke softly, not because she wanted to hide it, but because the dream still felt fragile, like something that might break if she said it too loudly. She didn't know that someone was listening from the hallway, silent, alert, and far more invested in her life than she ever realized. Shabana, her mother-in-law, had always carried herself with quiet authority. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. But she controlled things in a way that made people step back and adjust themselves around her. For years, Aisha tried to keep the peace. She respected traditions, stayed patient, and reminded herself that marriage came with family. But that night changed everything. When Shabana heard that Aisha was buying a house without telling her first, something inside her shifted. It wasn't anger. It was fear wrapped in pride. The next morning, the household woke up to a shock that moved faster than breakfast being served. Shabana stood in the center of the living room with a calm face and a bold announcement. She had decided to sell the family home. The timing was so sharp, so sudden, it felt like the air itself froze. No discussions. No warning. Just a simple statement, as if it were the most natural decision in the world. "This house has served its time," she said, her tone gentle but final. Aisha felt her breath stop. Her first instinct was disbelief. She looked at her husband, Imran, waiting for him to laugh, to say this was a misunderstanding. But he looked even more stunned than she was. That house wasn't just a building. It was the home his late father built with his own hands. Every wall held a memory. Every room carried a story. His childhood laughter still lived in the corners. His father's favorite chair still sat in the backyard. Selling it felt like erasing the last piece of him. Aisha saw the hurt in Emran's eyes, and something heavy settled on her chest. She knew this wasn't about moving forward or making a fresh start. Shabana had made her decision after hearing about Aisha's new house. It was too clear, too targeted. It didn't just feel like a coincidence, it felt like punishment. A message wrapped in politeness, as if saying, "If you build something on your own, then I will break what we have together." But Shabana didn't show any hesitation. She called the real estate agent herself. She spoke quickly, her steps fast, her voice steady. Boxes appeared in the hallway by noon. Old decorations were taken down. The home began to look less like a place of memories, and more like a property ready to be shown to strangers. Aisha stood at the doorway, watching Shabana move with confidence. The older woman's eyes didn't hold anger. They held something more complex. Something like insecurity dressed as authority. But understanding that didn't soften the blow. If anything, it made it worse. This wasn't an honest mistake. It was a decision made with full awareness. Aisha tried to speak to her, but the conversation went nowhere. "You bought a house without telling me," Shabana said. "What was I supposed to think? Do you want to separate from this family?" Aisha felt her throat tighten. "It's not about separation. It's about having space. Our own place." Shabana shook her head slowly, as if she already decided the meaning behind everything. People who live apart drift apart. I'm making a choice before that happens. Aisha felt her heart drop. This wasn't just controlling behavior. It was fear disguised as leadership. But it didn't excuse the pain it caused. The house sale wasn't a family decision. It wasn't even a conversation. It was a reaction. A retaliation. And Aisha was the reason. Imran tried to confront his mother, but guilt swallowed his words. He had always been the son who didn't argue. The son who protected his mother after his father passed. The son who stayed quiet to keep peace. Now he was caught between the woman who raised him and the woman he loved. And Aisha watched him collapse under the pressure, unable to choose. That night, Aisha sat at the edge of the bed thinking about how quickly things had changed. She remembered the excitement she felt only 24 hours earlier. The hope. The pride. The feeling of stepping into her own life. Now that dream felt tainted. She felt responsible for the chaos swirling around her. She felt responsible for the cracks forming between mother and son. She felt responsible for a house she never tried to control. But the blame wasn't hers. Deep inside, she knew that. And yet, the sting of betrayal didn't weaken. It grew stronger. She kept replaying Shabana's face in her mind, the calm expression, the certainty, the way she didn't even try to hide her reasoning. As if she was justified. As if hurting them was an acceptable consequence of maintaining control. Aisha didn't usually get angry easily. She was patient, practical, and always tried to understand people. But betrayal has a way of waking up a part of you that you didn't know existed. A part that feels sharp, restless, and unwilling to forgive. As she sat in the dark, she felt that part awaken inside her. The next day was even worse. Shabana began clearing out more things. She called relatives to inform them. Everyone acted surprised, confused, even saddened. But no one dared question her. Some even praised her for being wise and forward-thinking. Aisha stood among them feeling invisible. It was like betrayal layered on betrayal. She walked through the house quietly, touching the walls, feeling the memories of a place she didn't grow up in, but had learned to love. She thought about how Imran's father must have built each corner with care. She thought about how unfair it was that this house was being sold so rashly, without thought to the emotional cost. And then the question came slow at first, then louder, more insistent. How could she do this? And why should I stay quiet? At first, Aisha tried to push the thought away. She didn't want to turn into someone bitter or vengeful. But every new box that Shabana taped shut added weight to her heart. Every distant look from Imran made her feel more alone. Every casual comment from relatives made her feel smaller by the third day. The anger inside her wasn't a flicker. It was a steady flame. Aisha began searching for answers. She started asking quiet questions. She learned that the sale wasn't just sudden, it was rushed. Too rushed. Shabana wasn't selling the house because it was time. She was selling it before anyone had the chance to stop her. That truth hit Aisha hard. It made her chest tighten. It made her jaw clench. It also made her think of something she had never allowed herself to think before. Maybe I need to do something about this. Maybe I need to stop her. The thought scared her. But it didn't go away. The betrayal had happened. The wound was deep. And Aisha was finally starting to face the truth. Revenge wasn't just tempting. It was beginning to feel like the only way to reclaim what was taken from them. Aisha woke up the next morning with a restless feeling that sat deep in her chest. She felt like she had stepped into someone else's life, one where she wasn't in control, one where every choice was taken from her before she could make it. The house sale had moved faster than anything she had ever seen. The living room looked emptier. The walls carried a quiet sadness. And Shabana walked through the house with the calm confidence of someone who believed she was doing the right thing. But Aisha knew better now. She knew that the sale had nothing to do with moving forward or new beginnings. It was a reaction to her own dream. A reaction to the idea of her independence. A reaction to a future that Shabana was afraid she couldn't control. Aisha spent the morning watching Shabana speak to the real estate agent in the garden. The agent looked stressed, flipping through his folder, as if he had been pushed to work faster than he liked. Aisha noticed papers not signed properly. Valuation reports rushed, dates crossed out and rewritten. It was all happening too quickly, too neatly, too deliberately, and something inside her clicked. Shabana wasn't just selling the house. She was trying to finish the sale before anyone could stop her. before Imran could gather the courage to object, before Aisha could even understand what was happening. This wasn't just emotional pressure, it was strategy. Aisha didn't think of herself as a confrontational person, but betrayal has a way of changing the shape of someone's heart. She felt pushed into a corner. She felt small, but also strangely awake. And once she started to look closely, she saw everything she had missed before. She noticed how Shabana avoided discussing the sale price. She noticed how the meetings always happened when Imran wasn't home. She noticed how Shabana smiled whenever relatives praised her decision-making. It wasn't fear alone driving Shabana. It was pride, control, and a determination to hold on to the center of the family by any means necessary. Aisha could feel it in the way Shabana moved calm, steady, but with a tight grip on every detailed dot as the day passed. Aisha felt a growing need to protect something herself. Her marriage, the memories in the house, the future she wanted. She knew she needed a plan. She also knew it wouldn't be easy. That evening, Imran returned home looking worn out. His shoulders drooped. His voice was soft, and his eyes carried a heaviness that Aisha had not seen before. He sat beside her in the dark and whispered, "I don't know what to do." Aisha wanted to hold him, to tell him it would be okay, but she couldn't bring herself to lie. Instead, she asked him a simple question. "What do you want?" Imran didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled. "I want the house to stay. I want things to slow down. I want her to listen." But Shabana wasn't listening. She wasn't slowing down. And she wasn't going to wait for anyone's approval. Aisha realized she needed to gather information, not emotions. She needed facts that could stop the sale before the papers were finalized. The thought scared her, but she pushed the fear down. Revenge wasn't her first goal. Her goal was justice. To stop something unfair before it became permanent. The next morning, Aisha woke before everyone else. She made tea but didn't drink it. She waited until Shabana left for a meeting, then quietly walked into the study where the house documents were kept. She didn't touch anything at first. She stood there breathing slowly, trying to keep her hands from shaking. Then she opened the drawer. She found the sale agreement. She found the agent's card. She found the valuation papers. And with every paper she read, her frustration grew stronger. The price was too low. The process was too fast. The signatures were incomplete. There were missing pages, rushed reports, shortcuts everywhere. It wasn't just emotional betrayal now. It was possible legal negligence. Aisha felt a strange calm settle over her. She wasn't looking for trouble. She wasn't trying to play games. She wanted fairness. She wanted time. She wanted the house to be treated with the respect it deserved. And if Shabana was going to ignore all of that, then Aisha needed to protect the family in her own way. She took photos. She wrote down dates. She made copies. Her movements were fast, quiet, purposeful. Every step she took made her feel stronger. She wasn't doing this in anger. She was doing this because someone needed to take responsibility. And for once, she wasn't going to wait for permission. That afternoon, she visited a lawyer not for a fight, but for clarity. The lawyer looked at the papers with raised eyebrows. He asked her a few questions, then gave her a simple answer. "You can freeze the sale temporarily. These documents aren't complete. Legally, the process isn't solid." Aisha felt her heartbeat pick up. She wasn't imagining things. She wasn't overreacting. There was something wrong with the sale. She walked out of the office with the power to stop everything. All she had to do was file the request. Just one signature, one form, and the sale would be paused long enough for Imran to gather courage, for the family to talk, for the truth to be addressed. It was the perfect chance. It was justice. It was balance. But revenge whispered something else. It whispered that she could let the sale crash publicly. She could expose the rushed papers. She could embarrass Shabana in front of the relatives who praised her. She could make her feel the same helplessness she had given Aisha. Aisha didn't like the thought, but she couldn't ignore that a part of her found satisfaction in it. On her way home, she kept thinking about the consequences. She imagined Shabana's face. She imagined the shock, the frustration, the loss of control. She imagined Imran looking relieved instead of torn. She imagined herself finally standing up for something instead of staying silent. Her mind swung back and forth, like a pendulum. One side said revenge would feel good. The other side said revenge would break something that couldn't be fixed. When she reached home, she found Shabana packing more things, humming softly to herself. The sight was almost surreal. Shabana had no idea how close the house was to staying, how close her secret plans were to collapsing. Aisha stood in the hallway watching her. She felt both powerful and guilty. She felt like she was holding a secret that could change everything. For the first time, she understood that revenge wasn't just a feeling. It was a choice. A heavy one that could hurt as much as it healed. That night she lay awake again, the legal form in her drawer, her pen resting beside it. One small action could shift the entire future of the family. She thought about Imran's silent pain. She thought about Shabana's fear. She thought about herself, caught between wanting justice and wanting peace. Her heart beat loudly in the darkness. She wasn't ready to choose yet, but she knew the moment was coming fast. She knew she couldn't walk away from this decision. The betrayal had pushed her to a place she never imagined going, and now, with the power to stop everything, she stood on the edge of a choice that could either save the family or fracture it forever. Aisha woke up before sunrise, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house that was no longer a home. Today was the day everything would change. The sale papers were ready for final signatures. The real estate agent had planned to bring the buyers in the afternoon for one last walkthrough. If she didn't act before then, the house would belong to someone else. All she needed to do was sign one form to freeze the sale. One form, one pen stroke, one moment of courage or one moment of revenge. She slipped out of bed quietly, making sure not to wake Imran. He had been exhausted for weeks, carrying emotions he didn't know how to handle. She couldn't ask him to make this decision. This was her burden now. She dressed quickly and walked outside to the garden, watching the sky shift from black to grey. The cold morning air made her heart pound faster. She replayed everything in her mind: the betrayal, the silent days, the rushed boxes, the lawyer's words, the heaviness of being forced to consider revenge. The house behind her felt like it was watching, waiting to see whether she would protect it or let it fade. It wasn't even her childhood home, but she felt a strong pull toward it, as if the walls had adopted her pain and were asking her to fight back. Took a slow breath and stepped inside. The house was quiet except for one soundbox being moved. Shabana was already awake. Aisha found her in the living room, sorting through old photo albums. She was humming again, a soft tune that filled the room with a false calm. The albums showed childhood birthdays, family dinners, memories built long before Aisha entered their lives. Shabana looked up, surprised. "You're awake early." Aisha nodded, her voice steady. "I wanted to see the house before the buyers come." "Good," Shabana said, her tone warm, almost relieved. "It's time to let go. Time for everyone to step into a new chapter." Aisha knew those words weren't meant to comfort. They were meant to close the discussion, but she wasn't here to discuss anymore. She sat down on the sofa across from Shabana and watched her for a few seconds. The older woman's face looked softer in the morning light. Not cold or cruel, just tired and afraid. That realization stung Aisha more than anger ever could. "Why are you doing this?" Aisha asked, her voice calm but firm. Shabana closed the album gently. Her hands shook for the first time. "Because I can feel the family slipping away," she whispered. "You're buying a house. You're building a new life. If you move out, everything will change." Aisha felt the truth in those words. It wasn't about money or control. It was fear of abandonment, fear of fading importance, fear of watching her family drift apart. But fear didn't justify the hurt. "You didn't even ask us," Aisha said. "You made the decision alone." "If I had asked," Shabana replied quietly, "Imran would have said no. And I cannot live in a house full of memories that are becoming heavier every year. Selling it makes me feel like I'm moving forward." Aisha listened, really listened. For the first time, she saw the loneliness in Shabana's eyes. Losing her husband had left a space she had never filled. Selling the house was her way of trying to break free from that shadow. But she didn't realize how much her decision hurt the people she still had. Aisha felt something shift inside her. All this time, she had been fueled by anger and betrayal. But now, standing face to face with the hurt in Shabana's voice, her emotions tangled into something more complicated. Yet one truth remained. Shabana had acted without fairness. She didn't ask. She didn't consider anyone else. And that wound was deep. Aisha stood up and walked to the window. The sunlight was now spreading across the yard, touching the old tree where Imran used to play as a child. She imagined how losing this place would crush him silently. She thought of the legal form waiting in her drawer. She thought of the power she held. She thought of how one signature could flip the entire situation. She closed her eyes and pictured two paths. In one path, she stopped the sale. Shabana would be shocked, confused, maybe furious. Relatives would talk. Imran would be relieved but also caught in the middle again. The family might break apart under the pressure. In the other path, she let the sale happen. She let Shabana move forward, even if it hurt. She let Imran grieve the house but slowly heal. And she stepped into her new home without carrying the weight of revenge. Her hand tightened at her side. The choice was brutal. No option felt perfect. But one felt heavier: revenge. Revenge would give her a moment of satisfaction. A moment where she felt seen, heard, powerful. But after that moment passed, what would be left? More silence. More damage. More distance. She opened her eyes. "I went to Alawiya yesterday," she said, turning towards Shabana. Shabana's expression froze. Aisha continued, "I can stop the sale. The papers aren't complete. It won't be final unless you redo everything." Shabana's breath caught. You would do that?" Aisha didn't answer immediately. She looked at her mother-in-law not as an enemy, but as a woman who was clinging to something in her own way. "I could," Aisha said softly. "But I won't." Shabana blinked in confusion. "Why?" "Because I don't want this family to break because of me," Aisha replied. "And I don't want revenge guiding my decisions. I want peace. I want honesty. And I want us to heal, not tear each other apart." The silence that followed felt heavy, but it wasn't painful. It was full of realization. Aisha walked toward the door. "Sell the house if you believe it will help you move forward. But don't push us away in the process. We're still here. We're still family." Shabana lowered her head. For the first time, she looked unsure, vulnerable. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. "I know," Aisha said. "But you did." There was no anger in her voice, just truth. Later that afternoon, the buyers came. Papers were signed. Boxes were moved out. The house became someone else's. Shabana cried quietly once the last paper was finalized, not from regret but from release. And Aisha stood beside her, not as an opponent, but as a bridge. That evening, Aisha returned home with Imran. He held her hand tightly, overwhelmed by emotion. He had lost something precious, but he had not lost his family, and that mattered more. Aisha sat in her room later, holding the unsigned legal form. She tore it into small pieces and let them fall into the trash. She didn't need revenge to feel strong. She didn't need victory to feel whole. She needed peace, and she had chosen it. Revenge would have broken everyone. Forgiveness didn't erase the pain, but it allowed healing to begin. Aisha closed her eyes, feeling lighter than she had in days. She had walked away from a storm with her head held high. She had chosen the harder path, the kinder path. And as she drifted off to sleep, she realized something powerful. Sometimes the most meaningful revenge is choosing not to take revenge at all.